The Denver Broncos must run all over the Houston Texans. It's the Broncos offensive line against that fierce Texans defense. We'll break it all down and more here on today's episode, Locked On Broncos.
You are Locked On Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, happy Friday, Broncos Country. Welcome into another episode, Locked On Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where you know it's your team every day. Thank you so much to all the everydayers out there in Broncos Country. Thanks for tuning in and making us your first listen, however you choose to do so. I'm Cody Roark, Broncos reporter for Mile High Sports, joined as always by Sayre Bedinger, site expert over there, predominantlyorange.com. It's Friday. You know what that means. It's our final game preview as the Broncos look to win an AFC conference matchup on Sunday against the Houston Texans. We'll tell you why Bo Nix has a big opportunity in front of him here this week. And plus, we'll go through and tell you why the Broncos cornerbacks without Patrick Surtain, they got a tough test in the first game without the reigning defending NFL Defensive Player of the Year against a group of wide receivers that's getting their top guys back into the mix. Plus, we'll tell you why the Broncos must run all over the Texans and wreak havoc on C.J. Stroud. You're going to get all that on today's episode of the show that's brought to you by our friends over there at Mazda. And like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward, Mazda, Move and Be Moved. Sayre, final game preview up ahead. Great crossover episode you did with John Hickman of Locked On Texans to preview this game. But now we're going to go through our nuts and bolts here for Sunday's matchup. First off, I think diving into our players to watch, I think that's going to be the most important aspect here. I like your picks for this week's game, my friend. You care to share who you're starting off with your first player?
It's a couple of defensive guys for me, but Nik Bonitto, Cody, is my top player to watch this week for the Denver Broncos against the Houston Texans. We talked about it in the crossover episode. This is expected to be a low-scoring game, right? I mean, the odds makers are saying lowest over-under of the week out of any of the games out there. If that is going to happen, I think Nik Bonitto is going to be a big reason why, because over the last 2 weeks, Cody, you know who hasn't had a sack? It's Nik Bonitto, and he had 8 sacks in the first, 6 games of the season. Now here we are a couple of weeks later. He's still sitting on those 8 sacks. I feel like he's got a little ground to make up right now. And, you know, C.J. Stroud, he's got an offensive line in front of him that is, you know, they've been a little susceptible to pass rushers. I know we're going to talk about that more on today's show, but I think Nik Bonitto proving that he is the premier pass rusher in today's NFL, I think that's going to make him my top player to watch in this week's game.
Yeah, and look, a lot of teams have been trying to double team and take him out of the equation. I mean, he's seeing extra chips. But that's where I think in the last handful of weeks, we've seen guys like Zach Allen obviously step up. We've seen JFM really step up here for Denver. And that's because of the attention that guys like Jonathan Cooper and Bonitto are getting on the outside edge. I love that pick of Bonitto. I think we're due to maybe see big play Nik come up here very, very soon. Hopefully it is Sunday morning, 11 a.m. Mountain Time kickoff. I like that. One player I'm going to go with here today, Sayre, I'm going to go with Bo Nix. I think he's got a really big opportunity ahead of him, right? Because after his 4-touchdown performance last week against the Dallas Cowboys, everyone's like, oh, well, it's just the Dallas Cowboys. Yeah, he did exactly what he should have done there. Now he's going to be facing a very tough defense, Sayre. Derek Stingley Jr., Jalen Petrie, 2 really premier players in the corner and the safety positions in that Houston defense. And you have that tough pass rush, and you got pretty good linebackers as well. This is going to be, I think, the toughest defense, and I've said it all week, that I think the Broncos offense and Bo Nix has faced all year. And they faced some really good defenses, really good fronts. I just think overall, collectively, this is going to be the stingiest defense he goes against. And if he can go on the road, Sayre, and play effective football, be consistent, not turn the football over, and he could find a way to put up points and lead the Broncos to a victory here against Houston on the road in a tough AFC game. Look, Houston is much better than their record indicates, and that's because their offense has been so up and down. Their defense has been great. But if Bo Nix can go play well against this defense, I'm curious to see how the goalposts will move from his detractors that talk about him almost every single week, that put up their little acronym bro charts on Twitter. Bo Nix has a big opportunity to shut all these people up on Sunday.
I would love that so much. I really would. And I love some of those people, right? Some of the people who love advanced statistics and analytics and things like that. That's great. I'm glad that you're passionate about that. But look, Bo Nix passes the eye test. He does. He's just a good football player, and he's a player worth building around. So sometimes you got to be able to see the forest through the trees, and the trees are statistical data and analysis that breaks down every single throw of every single week. Cody, it's getting to the point of, when people chart like training camp passes and, percentage of completed throws during Skelly and 7-on-7 and things like that. It's like, all right, at some point we got to slow down with all this stuff right here, right? I mean, we're over analyzing what's happening before our eyes and missing the moment, right? You don't want to forsake the future just because you aren't pleased with what's going down in the moment. So I love that pick. I also have Dre Greenlaw in my players to watch, Cody. Of course, we've only gotten to see Dre Greenlaw play once this season. It was 2 weeks ago when the Broncos beat the New York Giants, and he was definitely on a pitch count for that game. So I'm going to be interested to see, now that he's obviously hasn't played a game in between, but is that pitch count going to go up because he's getting more acclimated to playing at full speed? I think he's going to be motivated to go out there and knock some teeth in, Cody, and press his old mentor, D'Amico Ryans. I know those guys, I'm sure, are still tight to this day. And, it's going to be a big-time opportunity for him with Pat Surtain out. I know they played completely different positions, but Greenlaw was brought in to be the enforcer of this defense. I saw our good friend Ben at Sports Talk Denver compared him to, the Aqib Talib of this Denver defense, right? And kind of does bring that kind of attitude, doesn't he? He's got that fire about him. He's got that, I'm going to go out there and 6 tackles and 20 snaps. Like, we know what this guy brings to the table. How big of an impact can he make in this game? Well, we're fixing to find out.
Well, and all the time that he has missed, too, that's just pent-up aggression. That's just wanting to be out on the football field and not being able to. There's frustration here. There's a release that is coming here for Dre Greenlaw, too. And the one thing he did is he did take accountability, saying, I should have never been in that situation. I got to be better. Like, he took full responsibility for his actions after the game that obviously led to him having a 1-game suspension. And then when asked about a pitch count, he said, I can go all night. So hopefully the Broncos can get him rocking and rolling here in Sunday's game against C.J. Stroud. There would be a very nice addition to see, especially against, running back as big as Nick Chubb. I know Woody Marks for them is also on the injury report there, but man, they got 2 big back, bulky guys. Dare Ogunbowale as well. And you just need a guy like Dre Greenlaw to kind of set the tone to say, hey, we're not going to let you run. It's not going to be easy this upcoming week here. So I like that pick here. I'm going to go with the defensive player next here. I'm going to go with Kris Abrams-Draine. Look, I think all eyes are going to be on him because, look, you can't replace Patrick Surtain the second. You simply can't. And we're not saying that he can. But there's a reason that the Broncos have believed in Kris Abrams-Draine. They've drafted and he's developing. He stepped up last year in the rookie spotlight. He got thrown into the fire, obviously, last week against the Dallas Cowboys, against CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens. And you know what? He had pretty good coverage. He kept everything in front of him. I'm curious to see the Broncos' approach here, though. I think Abrams-Draine is probably going to be the guy that gets to start on the outside, though Sean Payton did allude to early on in the week that they could use multiple guys. Vance Joseph said we could also use multiple guys as well. So I'm curious about this, but for Abrams-Draine, I think that with PS2 being out, you have Riley Moss. I wonder if the target share changed a little bit. I wonder if they're going to go after Abrams-Draine more so than Moss, but that's obviously going to play into our matchups to watch it. We're going to talk about here in a little bit. I'm just excited to see the second-year cornerback Adam Mizzou go out there and hopefully make some plays, and maybe we'll see a combination of guys stepping in. But I think regardless, whoever steps in at cornerback, I think it's Abrams-Draine. They have some pressure added to them this week against this Houston Texans offense.
They definitely do. And I would really like to add maybe Riley Moss as a honorable mention there, just kind of vamping off what you were saying. It's going to be a completely different way of going about attacking this Denver Broncos defense than we've gotten used to, right? Because Riley's been the most heavily targeted corner in the NFL this season, and there has been some feast or famine with that, right? Obviously, he's allowed the lowest completion percentage of any corner in the NFL, but he's also getting called for a bunch of penalties. And I loved Pat Surtain and Christian Gonzalez and Terry and Arnold. They're talking about all those penalties, and they go listen to Pat's podcast if you haven't already, or at least check out the highlights of that, because he had some strong words about Riley Moss being called for all these penalties.
So did John Gruden.
And John Gruden. Lots of people that you wouldn't expect, Cody. They're coming to the defense of Riley Moss here, and hopefully the NFL takes note of that. I'm still waiting at any point in time here. I want Riley Moss to have one of those games, one of those ones that you're just like, dang, this dude is, like you mentioned, the pent up aggression with Dre Greenlaw. I feel like Riley is due for a game like that where either he picks off multiple passes or he creates multiple turnovers somehow. Like, he's due for a ball don't lie game. So that's another honorable mention maybe that I'm looking for here.
I like it. Broncos Country, make sure you share with us today who you have your eye on in Sunday's game against the Houston Texans. But coming up next, we're going to tell you why that Broncos cornerback group, they got the work cut out for them as the Texans are getting back a couple of their top receivers. We'll break that down and more here on today's episode, Locked On Broncos.
This episode of Locked On Broncos is brought to you by Mazda's Moving the Game Forward. For those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, they move culture, and they keep moving the game forward. This week's moment that moved the game forward is none other than Denver Broncos rookie RJ Harvey, notching not one, not two, but 3 touchdowns in a week against the Dallas Cowboys, which he won AFC Offensive Rookie of the Week. Absolutely awesome effort by the Denver Broncos rookie running back, the second-round pick out of UCF, had the long touchdown run, ran it out of the Wildcat, caught a touchdown pass. He did it all. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. Today's episode of Locked On Broncos is also brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA is back, everybody, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or want to ride a hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every single game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. We know the Nuggets are putting up a ton of points. Great offense this year. My Chicago Bulls, they've been undefeated. It's great stuff. So right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. There's a ton of fun matchups to be breaking down here as the Broncos get ready to face off against the Houston Texans in Week 9. Are you worried about anything, though? Are you nervous about any of these matchups? This is another opportunity for the Broncos to go ahead and make a statement against a quality AFC team that's caught a little bit of fire here over the last month. Broncos Country, we're going to break down all those matchups, but I want to first say thank you so much to every single one of you that makes Locked On Broncos your first listen of the day. Every single day, we appreciate you all so much. And Cody, let's talk about these matchups because, man, we broke it down a little bit in the crossover Thursday episode. But of course, this is a game where I don't think you can really highlight enough of the matchups within the matchups. There's so many good quality player versus player, unit versus unit, whatever you want to slice it. This is a great game overall that we're going to be watching on the All 22 and really just diving in and enjoying that aspect of it. What do you think is maybe the top, though, individual position matchup here going up against the Texans?
Well, I think I might have to group them all together here in this situation, too. I teased it earlier. I think the Broncos cornerback group, Riley Moss, Kris Abrams-Draine, Jaquan McMillan, you name it, Jahdae Barron, whoever is out there, I think against this Houston Texans wide receiver group that is getting Nico Collins back and Christian Kirk. They're getting both those guys back. Obviously, they had Jaden Higgins. They got Jalen Noel. They got some really good rookies. They got some really good players over there in Houston. So they're getting, obviously, their top 2 receivers back. I know Tank Dell's not there for them this season after the scary injury he suffered last year. If he was healthy, then this would be an even scarier matchup to go into without PS2 in the mix. But I think when you talk about Christian Kirk and his ability, Nico Collins, who nearly had 200 yards the last time these two teams faced off, he almost had that in the first half, by the way. And I can't remember who the corner was that year opposite of Pat. I think it was Damari Mathis, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not sure exactly what it was, but this is just going to be a tough one because CJ Stroud, I think they know that the Broncos are going to send pressure after him, and they're going to try to get the ball out of his hands quickly. And I think that's where you're going to see them try to connect with guys like Kirk, see them connect with guys like Nico Collins. This is going to be, I think, a tough matchup here, and I think it's going to be one of the more important ones that maybe define the outcome ultimately of Sunday's game.
It definitely will. I don't want to necessarily say it's best on best in this game because I think you could say that about a lot of different matchups, but the Broncos' depth at corner is the best in the NFL, and it's being tested now. You're going up against a team that's getting really quality players back, veteran players, guys who can make, those tough third down conversions where if you're not in the right position, they're going to make you pay. Nico Collins, he'll make you pay, right? We've seen that firsthand as members of Broncos country just a couple of seasons ago. So when you talk about this Texans receiver room, how much more critical is it going to be? Another matchup that we want to talk about is those Broncos pass rushers, obviously going up against the Houston Texans offensive line. That pass rush, getting home quickly, forcing quick decisions from CJ Stroud, it's going to be huge, but also the pass rush on the other side, Cody, when you talk about Bo Nix kind of trying to build off what he did against the Dallas Cowboys, man, it's going to be critical for Garett Bolles, Mike McGlinchey, and anybody who's helping chip, anybody who's in pass protection at running back, and we know the Broncos will throw other guys back there. That's going to be huge in this game.
Yeah, and Garrett's been playing so well. I think Mike McGlinchey's been playing well this year as well. Garett, I think, is truly in consideration for that Protector of the Year award. At least we're talking 9 games through the season. He's played fantastic. He's going to face a tough test this week, too, against Danielle Hunter. And look, Denver's faced some really good pass rushers. You talk about Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, Abdul Carter. I mean, you name it. Good pass rushers off the edge. They've done a really good job of neutralizing. Trey Hendrickson, Garett Bolles dominated that matchup on Monday Night Football just several weeks ago, a handful of weeks ago, not several. But I think that you can see certain matchups where maybe they move Will Anderson around a little bit to maybe isolate him. But I like the Broncos' bookends at tackle at this point. Mike McGlinchey has shown to hold his own as well. I think the key this week is obviously those guys are going to attack upfield. How does it work on the interior? Can the Broncos avoid letting interior pass rush penetration get there to affect the pocket of Bo Nix? I think those outside guys do a tremendous job, even though that they're facing probably maybe one of the best duos right now. That's in terms of being on a stingy, suffocating defense. I think that this is going to be obviously one of the key matchups that could define this game. Protection, protection, protection on a hostile environment where we know it can get loud in Houston. We also know Broncos country travels well as well.
Well, let's maybe talk about the idea that over the last 2 weeks, the Broncos' top edge duo, they haven't been necessarily neutralized. I wouldn't say that. I think they've kind of, just compared to the first 6 weeks of the season, the last 2 games, those Broncos edge players, they've not been wiped off the board, but it's been a little bit more difficult. So do the Broncos even take some pages out of the books of the teams that they faced the last couple of weeks and say, hey, here was the plan going up against our edge duo. Here's kind of what we have to do. I'm sure they know their own way to do it, right? But you get what I'm saying. You look back at how teams have kind of, approached going up against you and going up against your elite edge duo and say, hey, they had success doing this. We know that Sean Payton is willing to pull plays from games that he, the touchdown run from Bo Nix, somebody called out that was from a 49ers Saints playoff game that Alex Smith ran that play for the 49ers like 15 years ago or something crazy. So that's the kind of thing that I'm talking about is you see how teams are playing you. Do you take some pages out of that book as well when you're talking about going up against a top tier edge duo like this?
Yeah, I think it's a great question to ask here. And look, I think another one, too, that's going to be important to highlight. I think maybe this might be the heavyweight matchup, Courtland Sutton against Derek Stingley Jr. These two have had some really good battles over the last couple of times that they've played. I think the last time they played, Courtland had a touchdown, but also Stingley had an interception. So they're able to trade barbs back and forth. This is going to be a tough one because I imagine they're going to put Stingley, they're going to have him follow Sutton everywhere. So this does open things up. Like this is the matchup to watch. Courtland, I think, is going to get a couple of shots downfield or even in the intermediate. But I also want to bridge this as part of like, okay, another big game potentially for Troy Franklin or Pat Bryant. It's unlikely that Marvin Mims is probably going to play in this game. 2 days in a row of non-participation at practice. We don't know what his status is yet here at Fridays, but maybe unlikely that he's going to clear concussion protocol before Sunday's game. Hopefully he can return on Thursday Night Football. So guess what? Pat Bryant, it's your turn to step up. Troy Franklin, it's your turn to go out there and continue to make big plays here. I think that's going to be important to watch here for this wide receiver room. You want to see where it's at, especially with the NFL trade deadline coming up. You got the rumblings out there. No Marvin Mims more than likely. How does this unit perform, especially if Courtland Sutton's going to see the attention of Jalen Petrie and also Derek Stingley Jr. bracket covering him at crucial passing down situations? I think that's something to watch for.
It is. And those guys all made plays in the game against the Dallas Cowboys. And that was great to see, right? And Courtland could have made even a couple of more, at least one more for sure, right? So we know that they left a little bit on the table, even given what we saw against Dallas. You want to build on that. And that was a game in which Marvin didn't do too much offensively. So not to say you won't be missing him, because you will, especially in the punt return department, which I want to talk a little bit more about today, Cody. But that return game takes on a new shape. The receiver room is maybe a little bit more clarified. Evan Ingram going to have to come through. I just think against a defense like this, you want to create those short situations on third down. The receivers are going to have to help move the chains and keep the ball in possession of Bo Nix.
Broncos country, make sure you let us know which matchups you're looking forward to the most here in Sunday's game against the Houston Texans. Coming up next, we're going to get to our keys to victory and why the Broncos, they must run against this Houston Texans defense and must wreak havoc on CJ Stroud. You get that and more here on today's episode, Locked On Broncos.
Today's episode of Locked On Broncos is brought to you by Rugiet. Let's be real, making excuses doesn't solve anything. We've all heard them before, right? It's just stress. I'm tired, or it happens to everyone sometimes. But when it comes to performance, sometimes your body just needs a little extra support, and that's where Rugiet comes in. Rugiet.com offers fast-acting, doctor-prescribed treatments for ED designed to help you stop making excuses and start making moves. Rugiet makes it easy to get started. You just connect with a board-certified doctor, 100% online, no awkward waiting rooms, no in-person appointments, and if prescribed, your treatment ships discreetly to your door. The process is fast, simple, private, and it's all handled by real doctors. It's about confidence, connection, and getting back to those moments that matter. Visit rugiet.com/LockedOnNFL to get 15% off your first order. That's rugiet.com/LockedOnNFL. And don't forget to use our code LockedOnNFL so they know we sent you. Rugiet, stop making excuses and start making moves.
If the Denver Broncos are going to win on Sunday, they must do these things against the Houston Texans to improve to 7-2 on a short week ahead of Thursday Night Football. Broncos country, thank you once again for tuning in, making us your first listen, however you choose to do so. We appreciate you so much, every single one of you out there in Broncos country. Sayre, let's get into our keys to victory here. We'll go rapid fire. Let's go back and forth here and exchange barbs on this one when we talk about our keys. I think this is always cliche, but I think it's so important this week. I teased it before. Obviously, we got to this segment. The Broncos have to run against this Houston Texans defense. I know that they're top 5 against the run, top 5 against the pass, one of the best defenses in all of football right now. But the Broncos, something has to give, right? Either the trend is going to continue for the Texans defense or the Broncos are going to buck that trend as one of the top rushing offenses right now in the NFL, and they're going to have a big contribution in Sunday's game. They got to run wild here against Houston.
How nice is it to be able to lean on J.K. Dobbins, who's got 200-plus yard games this season? I mean, he's been outstanding for the Broncos. Cody, if he can have a big game against Houston, I think we start getting really loud about the idea that he needs to be extended in season. Give him a couple more years added to the contract. He's been such a great fit for the organization. I love the idea that this game could maybe propel him to something here in the middle of the year. I love your pick of the run game being effective. How about this? When the Texans do get into scoring range, limit them to 3 and don't allow touchdowns. Don't give up touchdowns in this game. I think if the Broncos, I know that's easier said than done, but as much as we've been talking about the Houston defense for this whole week, and I'm included in that, man, the Broncos have the freaking one of the best defenses in the NFL as well. Vance Joseph, even without Pat Surtain, is going to have an opportunity here to keep that identity the same. That's been a common theme that we've talked about this whole week is what's the identity going to be without Pat? Are they going to do what they did last year and shift to a lot more zone as opposed to man coverage? Is he still going to blitz a lot? What's going to be like to have the wrinkle of Dre Greenlaw back? The bottom line is don't give up touchdowns whenever they do get close enough to score. That's what the Broncos have been great at all year is, those red zone trips, man, they just stall. That's what they've got to do to beat this Houston Texans team on the road.
Well, they're the number 1 red zone defense in the NFL right now. They've done a great job of holding opposing offenses out. And look, even last week, too, on that very opening defensive drive that they had against the Cowboys, which is the second-ranked scoring offense in the NFL, I think people forget that. When Pat Surtain went down, the Broncos still held them to a field goal, even though the ball was at the 1 or 2 yard line at that point. So very impressive for Denver to be able to buckle down in those situations. Obviously, the Texans offense has some talented players, but I think that trend will continue here for Denver's defense being stingy when it comes to the red zone, not letting guys in the end zone there, I think is going to be the most important thing. I like your key to victory. My second one here is going to be first down efficiency on both sides of the ball. We're talking offense. You need to have positive flow early on here so you don't find yourself behind the sticks on second down, which ultimately puts you in a tough position on third down from the offensive side of things. Defensively, make sure that you get stops early on. If they're going to run it, stuff it for a loss, stuff it for no gain at that point. Allow 1 yard and then change that up a little bit as well, especially if they try to pass it. Can you find a way to back them up? Can you get after C.J. Stroud on first down and maybe sack him and force a second and long? If that is the opportunity that the Broncos defense has and they can capitalize on that, it's going to play into their hands defensively that I think where they are going to allow themselves to continue to have success, not only as the number 1 ranked third down defense right now in the National Football League, but then it allows you to kind of pin your ears back a little bit, even without Pat Surtain. Play in front of the sticks, keep everything in front of you, and then you can rally and get stops and force punts, get off the field. It all starts with early down efficiency here for the Broncos.
It 100% does. Like you said, on both sides of the ball. And how about that third phase of the game, right? I kind of teased it in the previous segment, but who's going to return punts in place of Marvin Mims if he can't play? We saw Riley Moss out there. He caught the last punt of the game against the Dallas Cowboys. I don't necessarily know that they're going to want Riley out there returning punts. Maybe they do. Maybe they don't. I don't know who it's going to be. Like, do you have any insight that you can actually share on that, Cody? Or do you have any theories on who it could be? Because that's one area right now that I've just kind of like put at the back of my mind, and we're waiting for the game to find out.
It's a little scary to think about. Look, obviously all year long on the depth chart, the backup punt returner has always been Riley Moss. I don't know if they're going to put Sayre Bedinger back there to do it. I think that's certainly in the realm of possibility. I think, I don't know, without Marvin, if Marvin is not going to play, which I think that's the trend here. I think he's trending towards not playing. Is it a situation where you just tell Riley, just fair catch it every time, just fair catch it? Just because you want to be safe. Not only that, you don't want your other starting cornerback, who's very important to your defense, maybe taking a shot or getting twisted up on a return. And then all of a sudden now you're down without your top 2 cornerbacks in this game. You know, it's either Riley's going to be the returner or maybe Sayre Bedinger at this standpoint. I can't think if there's anybody else offensively. I mean, I think Troy could do it, but why would you want to put Troy Franklin back there to do it? So I don't know. I'm very curious for what Darren Rizzi's got up his sleeve. And look, obviously the whole thing with Marvin should have never happened. I think that's been a talking point all week long, how that miscommunication obviously led to some other issues. And I don't know if the NFL is going to do anything about that, but they're probably going to be looking into it. So we'll see how things play out. But not having Marvin is big, Sayre. Special teams has to be big. And man, Devin Key has been such a dog on special teams this year. When you talk about their punt coverage, their kick coverage, who's making plays? Number 26. Put some respect on Devin Key's name, folks. My last key to victory, Sayre, is really kind of goes into the matchup that we talked about earlier. Broncos cornerbacks. This is the opportunity where you know you're going to get tested, especially without Pat Surtain, where you knew going into the game, they're probably not going to throw to number 2's way. Now they might be able to throw to both sides of the field here. Now is your opportunity as a defense to go out there and get some interceptions. Get at least 2 interceptions here off of C.J. Stroud. That's what I want to see here from this Broncos defense on Sunday.
Absolutely. That's something that I was thinking about as well, is make CJ Stroud make bad throws or take advantage of his bad throws. Don't let him have the opportunity to, he made a mistake on this one, but we couldn't quite come away with it. Take advantage of every mistake the Texans make in this game. That's how you win games like this on the road that might be tight. They might be low scoring. You got to rush the passer. You got to create takeaways, and you got to take care of the football. And like you mentioned earlier, Cody, you got to run the football. Hey, here's an idea. Just throw Dondre Tillman out there on the punt returns, right? We saw the brothers got some serious skills in the open field in terms of the play that he made against the Cowboys. But all kidding aside, like, that is an area of this game that you just cannot lose ground. You can't lose the field position battle against the number 1 defense in the league. You got to create those extra opportunities for your offense. If you're the Broncos defense, create short fields and make sure that you take advantage. Like on the opposite side, the Broncos, you want to prevent them from getting touchdowns. When you're the Broncos, you get in the red zone, cash those opportunities in. I hope Sean Payton's got those plays ready in the old bag of tricks for when they get into the red zone, because he's created some pretty wide open plays throughout the course of this season.
Well, and on top of that, the Texans defense is good at everything else. They're one of the worst red zone defenses in the NFL, 31st ranked to be exact here. And, Sean Payton's keying and eyeing everything on film. They break certain things out. And I think we've learned some interesting insights that throughout the week of practice, they put these plays in, and then they show it in the team meeting the night before. And apparently they play the players' college fight song. So Troy Franklin, RJ Harvey, they play the fight song. Like, I think this is going to be a scoring play. Sean goes, I think this is going to be a scoring play. RJ's touchdown was a scoring play. Obviously, the one that they showed the night before the team meeting. He said, we think this one's going to be a scoring play. Troy Franklin's second touchdown of the night, they went and showed that the night before, and they said, tomorrow we think this is going to be a scoring play, and it was. So I'm curious to see what comes to fruition here in Sunday's game. The Broncos looking to improve to 7-2 and obviously improve to 4-2 in the AFC with a win over the Houston Texans. Tiebreakers essential. You got Kansas City and the Chargers creeping right behind them. Can the Broncos take advantage? That's the hope here. But with that said, Broncos country, that'll wrap up today's episode of the show. Sayre and I, we will see you after the game on Sunday for the Locked On Broncos post-game report. Enjoy your weekend. We'll see you then.